Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum yet again for the Tuesday's class, and this is our second lecture. And the topic of the lecture is the concept of culture. And the lecture, of course, assumes that you have gone through this article, if not totally, but at least very reasonable amount of pages. Uh, the word culture itself is very tricky word, and it's very problematic for sometimes, because as we can see in point number one. Anyways, the points that we will discuss in this lecture or in this article are three basically: difficulty in defining culture, and what is the reason behind this difficulty. Point number two is some definitions of culture taken from the experts, the anthropologists, and the writers in the area. Number three is the key characteristics of culture, and this would be the main part of our discussion. One clarification here: we have 12 different characteristics of culture through which we try to understand the phenomenon of culture. And in this lecture, which is lecture number 2, I shall be able to discuss only 6 one, half of the number available here. And the remaining 6 characteristics of culture would be discussed later on in lecture number 3, inshallah. And when I say that, there is a good news for you as well, because you don't need to be given advanced reading assignment for the next class, because we shall remain still in the same article, unfinished article as for the presentation is concerned. So we shall be discussing the remaining part of the presentation in the next Tuesday, inshallah. So let's start. Difficulty in defining culture and reason. You can read what is on the slide, but just give little attention to what I'm going to say. It is our daily experience that we see people, we see things, and our reaction usually within our own group, within our own society, is normal. But suppose we see a person from belonging to a different culture for the first time, especially. Usually our response would be that we are shocked, or we have the feeling of strange feeling, or we may mock, or we may ridicule that person, that situation, that appearance. Especially this is very true towards the colors, the heights, and the clothing, the attire, the dresses that people wear, and the way they talk and way they behave. I'm not talking about the language. The language difference is something else. You speak Urdu, I speak Punjabi, and others speak. This is not in the example. In the example is, as I said, the way they speak. Some people, you have seen the Arabs, when they speak, they have their own very interesting style, and the Europeans, they have their own different style of talking. Even greeting, take the example of greeting. When we greet Muslims, so we say assalamu alaikum, and the men or even the women, when they greet each other, they shake hand, and sometimes there is, they hug each other as well. But in the European countries, it is very seldom. It is very few situations when we see that. Suppose in a setting where 20 people are sitting, and you are entering that room, and you say assalamu alaikum, and just go to your seat and sit there, people would mind. They would say, you did not respect them, because the tradition is that you shake hand with each other and give full respect culture. And in a European society, if the same setting is there and the one enters and say hi, good morning, and sits, and this is fine. And if he starts shaking hands with everyone in the room, and this is considered as wastage of time, and perhaps is not good for the health. The culture. This is what I'm saying. The meanings of the culture, definitions of the culture are so diversified that it is hardly difficult to find one acceptable definition. uh, as I said, the concept of culture stems from the different usage of the culture. We say, this is good, this is they are cultured. This is cultured man. Cultured man means knows the etiquettes, is a decent person, knows he knows the or she knows the ethics, and this is the culture. But there's uncultured, those who are backward people. They don't know the etiquettes, they don't know the decent ways of behaving with other people, and so on. In 1952, a study was conducted in USA just to gather the various definitions of culture in the literature. And they collected various definitions, and they found that there were 164 definitions for the word culture. Uh, the word culture itself was excessively used in 19th century. Uh, the 18th and 19th centuries are considered the boom in the European Renaissance, when it was just the result of that intellectual dynamism which led people to study each and everything. So they also studied the phenomenon of culture. So hence it was excessively used in that era, and basically it was used in three ways. And what are those three ways? We are going to see it in from the next slide. Number one is, the culture is what? Special intellectual or artistic endeavors or products, where the paintings is, where the writings are, where the the sculpture is, where you create artistic things, and people are impressed by that, inspired by those things, or they are influenced by those things. And that was the culture. The educated people have culture, the elite class rich people, they have culture, and the artists, they are the cultured people, they have culture. But the illiterate, the uneducated people, they don't have culture. So it is the thing which exists in some segments of the society and did not exist in others, according to this definition of culture. And this concept associated with the Matthew Arnold's writing in his book that was published in 1867, and the title of the book was Culture and Anarchy, where his hypothesis was that uh, the society from this aspect can be seen from different angles, two angles. One is that there's a culture, a segment of society where the culture is found, and the segment of society which creates anarchy. So according to this understanding, the culture means the systematic way, bringing peace in the society, and also in integrity and in the society, and integration in the society. Promotes the smooth interaction among the people in the society. But this is just specific to some segments of society. The other, they are source of anarchy, which is the opposite of peace and stability. The second definition or meaning for which the word culture was used in 19th and 20th century was the quality. I'm reading from the slide. Quality possessed by all people in all social groups. Quality possessed by all people in all social groups. And this idea was given by Taylor in his book Primitive Culture. And the word quality, by word quality, he meant knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, and customs, etc. And he also classified, he also divided the quality into different, layers or different kinds. That there is a good culture, there is a bad culture, there is a high culture, there's civilized people, there's savage people, and so on. And this idea, Taylor's idea of the culture, definition of the culture, was really used by the anthropologists for a long time. And they took both the part of the quality and also the classification. The part of the quality, of course, is a great achievement, and as we can see, the classification, which was really rejected and criticized by the other researchers in the field. But this idea remained in the field for a long time until we have this one, which is emphasis on uniqueness of many and varied cultures of different peoples or society. The word keyword here is uniqueness of varied cultures of different people or societies. That means the culture, every culture is unique in its own form, in its own customs, in its own traditions, in its own history, because it's specific to that society, specific to those people who created that culture over the years. In this concept of culture, no value judgment. We cannot say this is bad culture, this is high culture, this is low culture, this is civilized culture, this is savage culture, or etc. Also, as I said, this definition criticized the previous definition of Taylor's definition, and it opened another avenue, which says that every culture is equally complete culture and can be studied and should be studied within, without bringing the external parameters for defining the culture. So if you go to the Zolo tribes in Africa, those who are living in a very primitive way, in jungles and in remote areas, so according to this definition, they have their own culture, they have their own way of living, they have their own language, they have their own tradition, they have their own belief, they have their own concept of life, worldview, everything. So that should not be classified with the value judgments that this is good or bad or whatever, or primitive or advanced or whatever. So the all the use is very important note on the definitions of the culture is that, of course, whatever meaning or the concept we have, you have, everyone has about the culture, it is basically derived from our political or ideological makeup or agenda. That means the way I see someone, uh, if I think that the this way of clothing is the best way, so I would of course I would call this is very good culture. But if I find the opposite of what I believe is good, so I would give a different opinion and different concept. We would be discussing all these aspects in our lecture here today, inshallah. And now some definitions, and these definitions are not new, in the sense that the previous three concepts are reflected in these four definitions, coming definitions. So you will feel that a kind of repetition, a good repetition is there. So according to first definition, culture is that complex whole. First element is complex whole, which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, we have discussed earlier, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. In this slide, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words with this blue color. Complex whole is the first one. According to this definition, the culture is a complex whole, which means it's not easy to define its boundaries. It's not easy to, put it in a black and white form or shape, where we say, okay, this line cuts the culture from other elements, or this line, there are gray areas in the culture. There are areas where we cannot clearly say that is this a part of the culture or it is not the part of the culture. This is one. The second is complex whole, is that how the culture develops, how it how does it change, and how does it evolve in a society, and why the culture of a particular group of people is so this is a complex whole, it's a complex entity. The second or the third blue word is capabilities. Any other capabilities that are developed by the members of a certain society are called culture as well. And habits that they have developed, they have learned, they have acquired are called culture. Now let's come to the last one. It's acquired by man. That means culture is not inherited. It is not related to the genes. It is acquired by man from that particular society. Suppose if you are born not born in Pakistan, you are born in China. So you would have acquired Chinese culture, not Pakistani, vice versa. If a Chinese a person is not born in China, rather here in Pakistan, and brought up in Pakistani culture, would acquire the Pakistani culture. This element is very important, it's consistent, and one of the characteristics of culture, and we will discuss it after some time. Okay, the second definition the second definition, since we are taking definitions, is patterns. Culture is a pattern, whether these patterns are explicit or implicit. Explicit means we can see them, we can touch them, we can feel them. Implicit, we cannot see them, we cannot touch them, we cannot feel them, but they are there. Of and for behavior, again we are coming to acquired and transmitted by symbols constituting the distinctive achievements of human groups. What are those? Embodiment in artifacts. What are the embodiment in artifacts? Mean that I'm talking to you now. Can you see my hands? Can you see the way I'm sitting? This is all artifacts. I'm using this laptop for the lecture. This is related to artifacts. The way I'm sitting is my artifacts. The environment around me is artifacts. The classroom that you are sitting, whether this is clean or not clean, whatever, it's artifacts. The way we greet each other is artifacts. So artifacts are the things that are visibly seen and felt. Also the traditional ideas and attached values. Of course, we have ideas, or every culture, people of every culture, they have ideas, they have concepts, and then there are values attached to each idea. And then the products of action, the action that we do is also part of the culture. Definition number 3 is the culture consists of the derivative of experience. I think this aspect is clear, that of course the human societies, after living centuries in a group, in a community, in a territorial place, they have experiences, and of course They have derived their culture from, through, by their experiences. And also the culture is more or less organized. When they say more or less organized, there is no, of course, intentional planning behind organizing this phenomenon of culture. But when the culture is exhibited, it looks organized. uh, to understand this element of the culture, see the customs of marriage customs in our society. No one, of course, tells us what to do and what people are doing usually in our cultural group. But they look very organized, as everyone knows that this should be done. Okay, then the learned or created by the individuals of population, a certain group. Is it learned or it is created? Both are there. It is created by the previous generations, and now it is learned by the new generations. And it is learned also by the old generation with the new changes in their own culture. I hope this is very much clear. If this is not clear here, it will become clear inshallah when we talk about the key characteristics of the culture. Images or encodements and their interpretation transmitted from past generations, from contemporaries, are formed by individuals themselves. Three things: transmitted from past generations, transmitted from past generations, from contemporaries, or formed by the individual themselves. In different societies, in different situations, all these three things can happen. It's not necessary, maybe transmitted from past generation. We see that the remote cultures, the areas where technology has not reached, modernization is not there, so they have transmitted from past generations, from one generation to other, in this way. From contemporaries, where the community of people, they pass through some evolution, some changes in the culture, so they learn from the contemporaries. Formed by the individual themselves is also a culture. And this one example could be the professional people working in a certain area. For example, the doctors, for example, the teachers, for example, the industrialists, for example, the laborers, for example, the other professions where the people work together, and they have they form a kind of individuals working in that area. They form themselves. They set the rules. They set traditions. They of course uh, they define their own behaviors within that culture. And accordingly, of course, one is considered good or bad according to their own values that are set within that particular profession. Number four is a little bit technical, but a little bit easier in my view. Culture is the collective programming. Now we are faced with the computer terminology, which is programming, but it's not individual programming. No one sits in front of the computer and writes in a language, a program in a language, and then it's programmed. No, it is a collective programming of the mind. So in a society where at least more than one people live together for a good amount of time, and then this collective programming happens among them, and then they create a culture. So this collective programming of mind distinguishes the member of one group or category of people from another. We see the village culture is different from the urban areas, and the urban areas also have their own differences in the culture. And according to the third concept of the culture that we discussed earlier, we are not classifying the culture as bad, good, small, big, high, low, civilized, savage. No, we are not doing that. But we are, of course, giving some adjectives, some description to the culture. When we say the village culture, I'm giving a description. The culture that is that is available in the village. The culture, urban culture, is in the cities. So these are four definitions, and as my students know very well that I brought these definitions reluctantly, because I don't believe in definition is if we really want to understand the things. My preference would always be uh, understanding the things through its elements, through its components, through its parts. I think I gave you this example in the previous lecture as well. This device has its parts, so I do not buy the definition. I do not try to memorize the definition what it is. This a remote controller for this, and then I try to keep this in my mind so that I don't forget it. Instead, I would say, okay, bring it, open it, what are the elements, what's its function, what are the colors, what is size, and then I would say, okay, now I'm in a better position to understand what the phenomenon, and also to perhaps to define it in a better way, my own definition, not borrowing the definition from other people. Anyways, there are 12 key characteristics of culture, six here and six remaining six in the next slide. Culture is number one is culture is manifested at different layers of depth. Culture is manifested at different layers of depth to be discussed. Number two, culture affects behavior and interpretations of behavior. Affects behavior and interpretations of behavior. Number three, differentiation between, we should differentiate between culture, number one, universal human nature, number two, unique individual personality, number three. So we should be very careful when we discuss culture, and we should also keep our eyes on differentiating between these three things: culture itself, universal human nature, and unique individual personality. Details are coming. Number four, culture influences biological processes. We'll see how the culture is influencing our biological process, or how it is influencing biological processes of other people in the whole world. Number five is culture is associated with social groups. I hope this line is a little easier. Number six is culture is both an individual construct and a social construct. That means in constructing a specific culture, individuals of that group, that society or that community, and the whole group, they both take contribute in that process. Number seven is culture is socially and psychologically distributed in a group. Culture is socially and psychologically distributed in a group. Number eight is culture has both universal, and in a terminology is called ethic, and distinctive. In the term it is called amic elements, but terms are not very important here. You need to understand culture has both universal and specific elements, universal elements, and distinctive, specific to certain group. Number nine, culture is learned. I have indicated to this in the definitions: acquired, learned. Number 10, culture is subject to gradual change. So it's not a static thing. It is not, stagnant throughout the years. It also changes. Number 11, the various parts of a culture are all to some degree interrelated. Parts of the culture are interrelated. Number 12, culture is a descriptive, not an evaluative concept. And this number 12, of course, is derived from the third concept of culture, which remained prevalent in 19th, 20th century, and still it is the most dominant concept of the culture, that culture is a descriptive, not an evaluative concept. So, my dear student, after this very brief uh, introduction of the topic, the concept of the culture and the basic definitions, and of course these two slides which present 12 title of the 12 key characteristics of the culture. Let's start uh, understanding the each characteristic of the culture one by one. Key characteristics number one, culture is manifested at different layers of depth. Manifested, exhibited. It is there. Sometimes it is shown, it is seen, but some things, some elements they are not. Some layers are not seen, but they are there. So we have three here: observable artifacts, visible and audible behavior. Observable artifacts, they are visible and audible behavior. We can hear them, we can see them, we can touch them, we can feel them. Observable. The Muslims, they go to mosque 5 times, they pray there. It's observable. If you go to any government office, you observe their artifacts, the cleanliness of their office, the way to enter, the security arrangements, and can you meet the high ups there or not? What are the cultural, norms there, which allow you or allow you or do not allow you to reach the high ups maybe. On the other side, maybe you go to another organization, you see it's from the very entrance, you see cleanliness and very good environment, and things are arranged, and you can go to the the highest officer directly without any permission. You can knock the door and enter. All these, yeah, of course, if you see the technology that they are using, if you their arrangements of their office and settings of their office, the furniture that they use, the way they greet their visitors, and so on and so forth, all these are observable artifacts. We can see them, we can hear them, and we can also touch them. Sometimes they are tangible things in that context as well. Behavior are also part of the artifacts. If you I think we all have practical experiences of life, and everyone every day we have this. Anyways, layer number two is values behind the observable behavior. Values that govern behavior. Why members behave the way they do. For example, the Muslims, as I said, I gave the example, they pray 5 times, they go to mosques. This is what observable layer, artifacts of the culture. Why value? What value means, what is the price in their mind? That is the reward that they have in their mind. They have been told that if you go to mosque for obligatory prayer, first salah, go there and pray there, you will get this rewards value of the weightage that you have, we have, or Muslims have in their mind when they do something. The third layer is underlying assumptions. Underlying assumptions and values are I think I will be differentiating them in a detail, but the values are the things that the members of that cultural phenomenon, when they do, they know inside their heart that we are doing it because we will get reward. But the assumptions, although maybe they were values, but they are forgotten. But they are there back in the mind, they are working. I think from the next slide we will talk more on the, because number one and number two, apparently I think they are clear in my view, in my understanding. Anyways, uh, let's take the details. Observable artifacts, visible and audible behavior patterns an organization. I gave you example of organization: physical layout, dress code, manner in which people address each other. uh, uh, we have this, usually if you go to the government offices in Pakistan, you are not received with the smiling face. You are treated in a different way. But if you go to your phone office, Telenor office, head office, well, established offices, you are greeted there in a very good manner. So these are the observable artifacts. Among the observable artifacts, also the smell and feel of the place. When you enter the place, you have a smell of that place, and you have also feel of that place. The people, emotional intensity. Are the people motivated working there, or the people depressed, or the people, different, indifferent from their work, or they are lazy or whatever. And also you see the technology that they are using, the art and the records and the projects and everything. Also statements of philosophy, annual reports, everything is included into layer number one, which is called this observable artifacts. And not only this, there are a lot of etc as well. I hope the layer of observable artifacts is now clear. With this, we can now move on to values that govern behavior. And the values, why members behave, the artifacts that they do the way they do. Why members behave. And I gave you the example of prayers. The Muslims pray that, and this is what they. The Muslims are also supposed to be clean and make their environment clean, because they have been told, although they are not. That means, what if you find a dirty place where the Muslims are living or they are working, and the place is dirty? That means they are not giving value. I mean, what they will get reward of keeping the environment clean. The observable artifact is that the environment is not clean. And why it is not clean? Because they are not giving value. They don't. And another example of value could be that, I have 1,000 rupees in my hand, and if I give this 1,000 rupees to a needy person who knows the value of this, he would behave in a different way. But if I give this 1,000 rupee to a kid who does not know the value, he would take it as a piece of paper and tear it down and finished. So whatever we do, actually, whatever the human beings do in the society, is the outer layer of the culture, but the value for which, why I am doing this, why I am doing this. For example, from this semester, I have decided to record my lectures. So there must be a value behind it, and you can ask me about this value when we meet face to face, because I'm not going to tell you this value here. So the value that govern the behavior, they answer the direct questions of why, and the members of that society know the answer if you ask them. Take the example of prayer once again. Take the example of cleanliness. Another example. Take the example of 1,000 rupees. Take the example of this using my own changing my teaching methodology in this semester. The third layer, the deepest layer of the culture, is that there are underlying assumptions. Assumptions are typically unconscious, means the members of that society, they also usually don't know, or at least most of them, they don't know. According to some scholars, underlying assumptions are basically the values which were forgotten, but they went down to the third layer, but they remain there back in mind. So the assumptions are typically unconscious but actually determine how group members perceive, think, and feel. So assumptions are there. Always assumptions are there. One could be assumption of the prayer, offering prayer 5 times in a mosque, that the value is that the reward that one gets out of this obligatory performing obligatory duty, and the underlying assumption is that this is the way where through which I can please my creator, my Khalik, my Lord, my Rabb. So this could be there. I'm just giving the example, but it depends. Maybe some individuals, they value what I'm saying underlying assumption, they say it's value, and their underlying assumption would be the vice versa. The reward that they get out of performing this obligatory duty. See this through the same thing have been emphasized here in this image. You see the artifacts and creations, visible, audible behavior, and technology, art, as we have seen. Visible but often not decipherable. Visible, it's very visible, we can see that. Then the values, then the greater level of awareness, where people know that why we are doing. The basic assumptions are the taken for granted. They are invisible, they are pre-conscious. So the relationship to environment, nature or reality, time and space, nature and human nature, nature of human activity, nature of human relationships. I hope these three layers are, alhamdulillah, clear to you. And all these layers are considered one key characteristic of the phenomenon of culture. So when we define the culture, we do not only say what the people are doing is culture. We also go to the values, why they are doing it. And if this why is clear to them, this is value. But if we go deep into the underlying assumptions, that is also part of the culture. This mobile device, what we see is the observable artifact. You can touch it, you can use it, we can hear the voices, we can record, we can send, and everything. But there are values behind it. Values means what is the value of this cover? That is determined, of course, not by me, by the engineers who prepared this device. But then there is another thing which is very, very important from this aspect. That value, of course, is what is the value of this cover? If this cover is not here, it can be broken. The screen can be broken. If this backer is not here, maybe the whole system is become unsafe. So what, and the underlying assumption, perhaps very few people of the company who made this, designed this, and then prepared it and made it in this final shape, they perhaps know. There could be commercial underlying assumption, there could be uh, cultural underlying assumption, there could be assumptions related to their own taste, their own perception, and so on. With this now, we I think should move to the second one, is culture affects behavior and interpretations of behavior. It lies in the way these practices are interpreted by the insiders. I think let's try to understand this through some example. Here you see one image where this ring gesture is here. This may be indicated as agreement or approval or acceptance in USA, UK, and Canada, etc. But this could be taken as an insult or obscene gesture in several Mediterranean countries. See? So the point here is culture affects behavior and interpretation of behavior. If you do this, This in countries where this is the meaning is agreement, approval, well done, acceptance in the countries that have been mentioned here as examples. So this will affect what? Your behavior, and this will also affect the interpretation of the behavior. People interpret, well done, but if you don't understand, you don't know the cultural value or the cultural meaning of this ring gesture in one of the Mediterranean country, and you do that and you take it otherwise, so it would also affect the interpretation of the behavior. Another example, choice of clothing can be interpreted differently by different groups of people in terms of the indications of wealth, ostentation, appropriateness, and so on. Let me start from my right side, where the boys are only, and the extreme left, where the only girls with hijab, and then in between. If these girls are in Canada with this kind of hijab, the interpretation of their behavior would be very, 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 very different, and we would say, oh my God, this is. And if these girls are in a village in a Muslim country, it would be considered, it would be interpreted, this behavior would be interpreted in a very positive way, and many good things would be associated to these girls. Take the example of the next girls. If these girls go to a village in a Muslim country, or in a village into Pakistan, maybe their behavior is interpreted, they would be tagged with the, I think, not very positive titles. But if these girls go to Europe and European countries, the Muslims living there, they will see them with full respect, that they are observing hijab, they are observing the Islamic hijab or Islamic way of dressing up. On my extreme, the boys, same way the example of boys can also be interpreted. The behavior can also be interpreted. Nowadays, this is my personal observation, I have seen boys with long shorts, and they are entering into mosque and they are praying with the people and then going out. And the people of old generation, I have seen them raising their fingers and objecting their this behavior, interpretation of the behavior. Point is that the this affects the interpretation of the behaviors, affect the behavior also, and interpretation of the behavior. With this, number three is differentiation between culture, universal human nature, and unique individual personality. See this pyramid from down: human nature. Human nature is universal, it is inherited. Okay, the culture is learned, and specific group of category, I think it's clear. At the top we see specific to individual personality, inherited and learned, both could be both. Let's go to the example. Culture is I'm sorry, where I am. Yeah. I have changed the arrangement. I started from the human nature, culture, and personality. Now I'm starting from the culture, from middle. The culture is learnt, not inherited. It derives from the one's social environment, not from one's genes. As I think this point already has been explained in detail more than once. So the culture is actually acquired. It's nothing to do with the genes, nothing to do with the inheritance. So this, I think, should be the middle point, is a little easier. Perhaps that's why I have started with this point. The next is the universal human nature. What all human beings have in common. All human beings eat. All human beings feel love. All human beings feel hunger. All human beings become angry. All human beings need clothing. All human beings need shelter. All human beings have their moment of pleasure. All human beings have their moment of uh, uh, other moments, not. displayer, and so on. I don't want to use the negative words. There are a lot, and people use them a lot, and I get affected. You can see the pictures here. So all the emotions we share, the whole humanity. People living in Muslim societies, in non-Muslim societies, in Asian societies, in European societies, in American societies, in African societies, all colors, all features, all, they may differ in something, but the need of the food, the need of the love, the need of the affection, the need of the clothing, the need of the shelter, the need of the basic needs, we share them. So what is this then? Basic needs is the number one that is said, human nature, and this is universal and this is inherited. We don't have any control over this. Number B is universal human nature. What all human beings have in common is that. Number three is C, unique individual personality. So, unique personal set of mental programs which does not share with any other human being, partly inherited, partly learned. Learned means modified. Unique personal experiences. This is our observation in the society. We see that some members of that cultural community, they belong to that cultural community, but they have their own distinct habits. They cannot be taken as the cultural habits of that group or the culture of that group. They are their unique personal traits, and they are there. Some people are more creative within that cultural group. Some are little different within that group. So uniqueness is always there in the individuals. So those unique traits of individual should not be considered culture of that particular group. Does it make sense? I think this is clear. Hope, inshallah. So let's go to the number four, cultural influence. Culture influences biological process. How? We have discussed earlier, human nature is universal, is inherited. You know, food is a need, is a basic human nature. But eating, coughing food, but what we eat is cultural specific. When we eat is cultural specific. How often we eat, how much we eat, with whom we eat, according to what set of rules we eat. All is partially regulated by our culture. The timings that we eat, the kind of food that we eat. The Pakistani food, if I say the breakfast, nashta, the Pakistani nashta is usually under paratha, people say that. But if you ask Chinese what breakfast, what do they eat in the breakfast? Europeans, who ask the Europeans what do they eat in the breakfast, would be totally different. But even then, it is breakfast. And of course, it's a food that is the basic need of every human being. But as we can see, with whom we eat, when we eat. I have seen the eating habits in in different countries. Some countries, they take their breakfast at 6 o'clock and lunch at 12 o'clock exactly. There is national. They have developed this national habit, and dinner at 7 o'clock in summer, in winter, every time, regardless of the sunset or sunrise. But here in Pakistan, we see that in urban areas, the timings are different. In rural areas, the timings are totally different. So, culture, with whom we eat, I eat. Do people usually prefer to eat alone in a specific culture, or do they prefer to eat with the family or with their loved ones or with their spouses or so on and so forth? It's related to culture. So the culture influences biological processes. Now, how it influences the biological processes is very strange. Of course, we don't eat frog, do we? I think we did. Can you imagine eating frog? And on this planet, there are people who eat frog. So food is basic need. We share this, all humanity. But when we see, suppose someone in a country and we are guests there, bring a food and we eat it, and after eating, our host announces that it was a frog. What would happen to our biological process? I can tell you my reaction. I think without any intention, my organism, my organs would start you know feeling of vomiting. Why? Take the example of lizard, and take the example of other food that are prohibited in our culture. I hope this much is clear, and there can be many other examples. Culture is associated with social groups. Of course, every social group has similar or same behavior. Everyone belongs to simultaneously to a number of groups. So we have national culture, Pakistani, but I do have my culture of my own, home, my own city. Regional, ethnic, religious, gender, generation, role, category, occupation. The teachers, they have their own cultures. The students, they have their own culture while they are students. Being students, they have culture, but when they go home, they see the culture of that community. But when they behave at national level, they follow the national culture. So the culture is associated with social groups. We can also say that one individual lives in different cultures whole day, maybe moves from one culture to other, and he knows or she knows how to adjust into that. What are the norms of that particular the culture? Number six is culture is both individual construct and a social construct. So psychological construct and social construct, individual differences in one culture. This point can be best understood with this one, where I was talking about the unique individual personality. This third one is because here it is very much associated with both individual construct and a social construct. Sometimes one member of the group becomes so influential, and that person contribute a lot in constructing the culture of that particular group. Social construct is already there, but that person uh, becomes a you know uh, very important tool for bringing a change in the culture, in that culture of his or her group, by the virtue of his or her influence in that group. With this, my dear students, I have also become little tired today. I stop here and we will finish this PPT and the whole the topic, concept of culture, in lecture number 3 of this course. And before I close the lecture, I would remind you uh, one thing which you are forgetting. I don't know why. Send me your emails because you need these PPTs and maybe some other material in future. Take very good care of yourself and have a good day and week ahead. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.